Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Stephanie Manny. I am the Senior Director of Talent Strategy and Leadership Development at City Forward Collective. And we are so excited to have you all here today to really have a discussion and hear from some leaders around the city about what they're doing in terms of long distance learning. We're all in this new space. And in this new space, we know that we're going to be educating our scholars virtually and in some spaces in a blended learning model. And this is about us sharing some best practices on the journey. For those that have not had the opportunity to hear of City Forward Collective, I just want to tell you a little bit about us. We're a recently launched educational nonprofit here in Milwaukee in July of this past year. We are really focusing on ensuring that every scholar in Milwaukee has access to a high quality school. And we do this through 4 pillars of work, really focusing on effective and representative talent, which is the team that's here today. Also focusing on community organizing and parent organizing, really trying to help create the platform for those voices to be at the table and leading this charge, because we recognize that it's not work that we can do alone. Also really looking at the policy work, thinking about what are the barriers that are getting in our way from ensuring access for every child to a high quality school in this city. And ultimately really looking at how do we expand and replicate those great schools in the city, no matter what sector they are in. So that's just a little bit about the organization. And now I am going to turn it over to the team, who's going to tell you a little bit about them. Melissa?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming today. I'm Melissa Caponegro. I'm the Director of the Quality Schools Initiative here at City Forward Collective. I am sharing my screen right now, so if it's freezing and stopping, just bear with me. We like to be upfront that this is technology. We try our best, but we've run into some issues, and so already my screen has not been cooperating, so I apologize in advance. Anyway, prior to City Forward Collective, I worked at schools like Milwaukee as a school leadership coach, and before that, I was in Chicago as a principal, but I've been in Milwaukee for 2 years now, so I believe it's home, even though I always say that, oh, I'm new here in Milwaukee, but after 2 years, I feel like now I officially call it home. So excited to be here with you all and excited to hear from our spotlight presenters today. So thanks for joining us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jaribel Rodriguez. I am the Director of Teacher Talent Initiatives at City Forward Collective. And in a nutshell, what that means is that I'm responsible for coordinating or helping work with different organizations across the city to build a more engaged and inclusive teacher pipeline with a focus on Black and Brown educators. Prior to coming to City Forward Collective, I was the proud principal at Lincoln Avenue School with MPS, and also served as a bilingual literacy coach and a bilingual teacher here in Milwaukee. So welcome.
Thank you, ladies, very much. And I skipped telling you a little bit about myself. I have been at City Forward Collective since its launch in July. Prior to that, served as the Director of Leadership Development at schools that can Milwaukee. And prior to that, spent 20 years working in Milwaukee public schools. And with my new hairstyle, I know it seems like I started working when I was 5, but we'll take care of that in the upcoming months. Today, our goal really is about you as leaders learning about the various strategies and systems that will support you in your distance learning planning. I think one of the shocking aspects of all of this is we all had planned and been in a place of hope that we were going to get back to brick and mortar school this year, and we're not. And so with that in mind, we have to ensure that we are doing the proper planning to ensure that education continues for our scholars, specifically given that many of us serve those that are most in need. So what you see on the screen today is just an overview of this session. We'll have some spotlight panelists, and I encourage everybody to ensure that you are asking questions. I know Jaribel, prior to the session, provided everybody with a note-taking guide. So please ensure that you are using those, because you'll be hearing lots of information today. And also, as we're going through, making sure that you feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions of the presenters, or if you're more comfortable, just dropping those questions down below in the chat box. Thank you. So our session norms today, if you see on the left-hand side of the screen, those norms are norms that we're generally operating from. If you look at the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see our new virtual norms. One of them is be on video, and I know myself, I'm struggling with that at times because you're always seen and always being looked upon, and that doesn't normally happen in meetings. But I think what we're hearing from our partners around the country is it's just a way to keep us all engaged and keep us all connected. Again, we encourage you to use the chat box. There is not one expert in the room. I looked down below and we have 34 people on the call. And so I feel like we have 34 experts in the room. So please use that chat box to share ideas that you have. If a presenter may be talking about one platform that they're using and you're doing that work on a different platform, please feel free to share that information in that chat box. And again, jump in with questions. We encourage you to keep yourself on mute, but unmute yourself with responses. Please know that we are in a place of being super flexible. So we know your furry friends, your kids, your spouses. You'll hear Joe Hartlob in a minute giving me feedback as I go through this presentation, which he does every day. Jump in. So it is not an issue or a problem. It is just our new world. As we engage in this work, we want to kind of highlight for all of you some of the lessons that we are learning from talking to leaders around the city, from talking to our national partners, and also from talking to a lot of the teachers that are working with you and for you, is to really think about taking this bite-sized approach, which means keep it simple for teachers, for families, and for students. When you're thinking about communication, like, is there a point of communication so families and students aren't being overwhelmed? When you're asking teachers to plan in this new space, they're going to need more planning time. All of us are not tech savvy. So in addition to focusing on content, we've also now got to start focusing on how we're going to deliver that content in a virtual format. Be laser focused. We have really been encouraging people to think about what you're doing in those major content areas around reading and math in ELA. Keeping in mind that culture is equally as important as academics at this point. So what are we doing to help our students stay connected, our families stay connected, and ultimately for all of us to find joy in this new space? And just always keeping a positive mindset. The glass is half full. I feel like one of the lessons I heard when we were on the call with the deans yesterday was really this whole idea of, I know now how to engage with my students in a different way, and I'm going to bring those same lessons back to the brick and mortar environment. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. And for those of you who joined us yesterday in either of our sessions, you may have seen this slide. And so, you know, don't share all the answers that we discussed yesterday, but what Stephanie was saying about, you know, really making sure we have this bite-sized approach is also thinking about what is in our control. And there's a lot of things that are not in our control right now. And so I want us to take a minute and just reflect on that. Brainstorm a list of decisions that need to be made that are connected to the priorities you have, and just take a minute and write those down. All right, let's come back together. And I want you to think about some of these priorities and decisions that you wrote down, and whether you wrote them down or not, let's share out some. So what are things that you feel like right now are in your control? What are things that you can actually control right now? And all I ask is you just unmute yourself and share out, or you can share it in the chat box. What's in your control?
One of the things that I think we have control over is communication to our staff and to our families.
Thanks, Jim.
In addition to that, I think we have control over what we put on our educators' plates. As a building principal, I can control somewhat what goes on the plate for our teachers to be working on.
Great, thanks for sharing. I see in the chat box, Alhaji, thank you for the messaging is in our control, sharing resources, meeting times and minutes. Anything else coming up that's in control right now? I know the next one probably feels more relevant since right now no one really understands this new normal we have. So what are things that are not in our control that we cannot influence right now? Personally, professionally as it relates to our work? What are things that we have to understand that we cannot control them?
Melissa, I just wanted to highlight in the space that we can control what Christy and Samantha were sharing, which is around how we operate personally and then how we act and respond to the situation.
I think things that we cannot control are very simply, we can't control what and how much work is being done from our students. We really don't have control over that. I think we can influence that. I think there's things that we can do to help influence depending on how we structure the learning environment for our kids. But we just can't control what they do on a daily basis.
Thanks for sharing that, Jim. I'm feeling the same way about my own child as she was wrestling with the dog earlier when I was on a call. So yes, out of my control. And I understand that. Anything else that feels out of your control that you cannot influence? Maybe a couple more before we move on.
I just like to say, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Gail.
I'm just saying, I'd like to say I'm very frustrated about the whole influence aspect, in that I have a position where I should have more influence. And I'm finding that from the top down, a lot of the systems are even more broken in this reality, in that there's a disconnect with this disconnect, in that not only was it at one time where the organizations kind of worked on their own, as in like departments or like from a central region to a school region to what a principal gave as a direction to the teachers. But with this online atmosphere now, is that it is even more disconnected, where every little group seems to be doing their own thing. And then it's becoming an overload, not just for teachers, but it starts with the principals and it starts up, and it's very hard because you try to have an influence and then you just can get muted, I guess is what I'm saying. So it's very frustrating, I guess, is where I'm at with that.
Thanks for sharing that, Gail. I think we had one other that was going to jump in as well.
So the other thing that is, it has a huge influence on the achievement of our students, but the available technology or the availability at our students' homes in order to be able to access all of the wonderful lessons that we can create. We can create amazing lessons, but we can't control whether or not students actually have consistent access to them.
Yep, thanks for sharing that. So just keep this in mind as we go through today. I'm going to turn it back over, but thank you for sharing. And let's remember that not everything is in our control right now, and we know that that's a difficult space to be in.
One of the things that we have been talking to leaders about is really this prioritization process. As you're trying to basically build a new structure on the fly, really brainstorming and keeping lists and doing all of those things that I think you will hear our presenters talk about in more detail today. So really taking stock of what are all the current instructional materials being used by teachers, whether they're paper and pencil materials or whether those are online materials. Talking with your teachers and thinking through and having a list of what are all the instructional strategies that teachers are currently using, because that will put you in the space to really think about how do we transfer some of those instructional strategies into a virtual environment in the way that is succinct, in a way that is coherent, and in a way that is productive for the scholars that we serve. I think in a lot of the information that we've been looking at, it's really thinking about how do you prioritize those standards even that you're teaching for those scholars, which ones can live and be alive and be enriched in the virtual environment, and which ones do we have to place to the side for now in our new space. So thinking about in terms of technology, what do we have with our students that provides easy access? So not just thinking about our platforms, but with our phones, can we access students through Instagram, through Facebook, through YouTube? Can we provide them with access to the lessons that we're teaching? Difficult things for our students and our families to access, are really specific platforms and then the continuous streaming. So I heard some of that. What we can't control right now is our families' access to technology. And so I think that's when we as leaders get in the space and have to think through how we are engaging all of our students and how we're giving easy access, as well as trying to create space for them to have access to some of these platforms. Thinking through everything always comes back to equity. So as we're planning, as we're thinking about how we are going to engage our students in this virtual environment, how are we monitoring? How are we grading? What devices do our students have access to? And as we're thinking through this overall system for the students that we serve, being equitable in that. Not all of our students are going to have a quiet place to work. So how are we thinking about workload? How are we thinking about how often we're asking students to engage with us face-to-face versus how we're offering students access to pre-recorded lessons? So really continuing to come back to this place of equity and looking through that lens is what I'm asking students to do. Will they have access? One of the, or two of the terms that I feel like keep coming up in this new virtual environment is really this whole idea, which is new to me, of synchronous or asynchronous learning. And the idea of synchronous learning, I think about as an online class where the teacher is providing instruction and we're all there at one time. And asynchronous learning is really this whole notion of lessons being pre-recorded and learning occurring at different times and in different spaces for kids. And I know with our high school teachers, we talked a lot about that because given the economic situation that we're in, so many of our students are working 40 or 50 hours a week. And so they do need to have that opportunity to engage in learning and engage in those lessons, not being in the whole group. And based on what we're seeing from research, again, around the country, great long distance learning model and long-term learning models include a piece of both of these. In this new space and in this new world, we are having to really kind of connect with parents and families in a different way. And our national partners from Education Elements have told us we've really got to think about school in a different way. And we've got to think about our long-term planning in a different way and our distance learning in a different way. And when we think about that, there are these cycles of learning in these 4 buckets. One of the buckets is really around operations. So that gets us to this place of thinking about how are we planning? How are we tracking the information that we have on students? Where is that information being stored? Who has access to that information? Then kind of leaning into that cultural space and thinking about how are we engaging with families? How are we engaging with students? How are we tracking those students and families that we are not engaging with? And kind of back to that idea that we started with, how are we bringing joy to the space? How are we really taking our virtual, our culture that we had in brick and mortar and moving that into a virtual environment? And ultimately coming back to that space, because this is the bread and butter of education, around instruction. So kind of what is our purpose in that instruction that we're providing every day? Is it maintenance? Is it mastery? Is it to provide children with that space of new learning? And also with our staff, really having clear expectations around what's the floor? What is our minimal level of expectation around instruction? And then coming through that space of systems. How are we building systems to ensure that there's clear communication with families and students, there's clear communication to our staff, and do we have accountability in place for everybody so that we can ensure ultimately that learning continues? This session today is really about you. And so I want to take a moment and have everybody think about what is your vision for visual learning. You're going to hear from different presenters today. They're going to share with you what their vision is and how they're carrying it out. But in this space, this is about you and what you want for your students, what you want for your families, what you want for your community. So when you think about your virtual learning vision, what is it? What does it look like? What does it feel like for you, for your teachers? And ultimately, if you could think about 3 critical components to make that vision a reality, what would they be? So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to think about that, jot it down on your participant guide. I'm going to ask everybody in the chat box to list one of those critical components. Hearing a lot of people chatting about ongoing communication with families, using all of the available resources, learning about what's happening online. So I think as you reflect on what your vision is and keep those thoughts coming as we're going along, I want you to be listening through that lens when you're listening to the speakers today, thinking about what is it that they're saying that could work in my environment? What adjustments would I need to make to work in my environment to go along with my vision? And what additional questions do I have? So looking through that lens and always coming back to this space of there are lots of things that we cannot control, but your vision and having that vision become a reality is something that you do have control over. So as you listen to the panelists today, and as you see others dropping awesome ideas in the chat box, thinking from your locus of control, what is it that you can implement to ensure that the scholars in your school continue to have access to a high quality education? I'm going to turn it over to Jadibel, who's going to introduce our speakers for today, our panelists for today.
All right, welcome. We're really excited to have 4 panelists from 4 different schools that are all doing different things. But when we look at those big headings, which are operations, culture, systems, and instruction, you will see that there's clear plans that have been communicated. So our goal is, it doesn't matter where you are in this journey right now. I know some leaders are just starting their distance learning plans, and some people are well 4 or 5 weeks into their plan. Think about what you can use, what tweaks you can make, or what things you should be thinking about for the fall. If we can't open schools in August, or if we go into school in August and we have to close back down, what are those things that you can be thinking about now proactively in systems that you're setting up so that we can be prepared if this were to happen again? Our first panelist, Melissa, if you can drop the link again to the note-taking guide. I noticed a couple of people that came in late, so that would be helpful. And our next panelist is Courtney. Courtney is the founding principal at Rocket Ship Transformational Prep, and she will be sharing with us some of the work that they're doing at Rocket Ship to continue learning for students and families.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Courtney Vang, and as Yaribel said, I am the founding principal of Rocket Ship's Northside School, Rocket Ship Transformation Prep. If I could I have access to share screen? I'm going to show a little PowerPoint here, try to highlight some of the things that we've done. I would also just echo what Stephanie said around making sure that, all the ideas that both I present and all the other panelists, thinking about just maybe what's one thing you could take away and use in your own practice. I think, you know, obviously this is so different for all of us as educators, but also different and unique for our families and our students. Unless they've been to an online school before, this is just quite a unique challenge. So I feel like the biggest lessons I learned is kind of take things step by step and think about what are the bite-sized changes you can make each week. I tell we do a motivational Monday at our Monday assemblies, and 2 weeks ago we had this quote for the students that said, winning doesn't mean being in first place. Winning means always getting better. And so I try to think of that mantra here in distance learning. It doesn't mean we have to be the best and do all things perfectly, because that's just not the world we live in right now. But how can you constantly improve and just think of one thing you can do better or can bring back to your team or your schools and improve upon for the next week. So with that kind of framing, I want to share a little bit about what we've been doing at Rocket Ship. And I think something that I feel very fortunate to have is at Rocket Ship, we're a part of a national network of charter schools. So we've been able to really leverage the network team. So I will say that all of the things that you'll see, not all of them are things we in particular have created, but may have looked to our network or collaborated with other schools. We've also tried to talk with other schools in Milwaukee to get their thoughts and feedback as well. So I think, again, that's the power of City Forward Collective, is being able to connect with all these other leaders on here and share resources with one another to constantly improve our schools overall. So the platforms that we have focused on primarily are Facebook, Zoom, and Google Classroom. We were fortunate enough we've already used Google Classroom prior to the shutdown. So we were able to jump right into that, especially with our older students, our second graders on up. But we also had closed Facebook groups for our school. We had a primary one for our whole school. So it's closed, it's private. You can only find it by searching it. And then to get into the group, you have to name who your Rocketeer is, what we call our students, and how you are related to them. So that it's not just friends, it's really only for direct family members of our students who can join the group. So we already had that in place, and we just created grade level groups so that they could post specific announcements for their families. We also use Zoom quite frequently and have started to use Google Hangouts a little bit, but find that the features of Zoom are just more widespread. There's more of them. And then we also created, and I'll make a little plug for this at the end too, but Rocket Ship put together what we call our distance learning launchpad, and it's a website with a ton of resources from academic lessons, SEL lessons, creative lessons, and anybody can access it. So if you or your teachers are looking for additional resources or videos, some of the videos are our teachers doing remote lessons, and some of them are, YouTube lessons we've compiled for specific skills and standards we know are important for that grade level. So would definitely recommend taking a look at that as you either continue your work in distance learning or are jumping off your distance learning. I think that could be a valuable resource for you guys instead of having teachers recreate the wheel. And then in terms of devices, again, we were fortunate enough, when this was coming down the pipe, we kind of figured something was going to happen on that 13th of March. And we actually sent all of our 3rd and 4th graders, our testing grades, home with Chromebooks that day. And then when we realized it was going to be a little bit longer, we started sending out Chromebooks for other students, and we worked our way down in grade levels, starting with 2nd grade, 1st grade, and then trying to get as many Chromebooks out to as many families as possible. So that may mean there's 2 or 3 kids in a family trying to share one Chromebook, but we figured at least one device in the household is better than none. So we did that until we got rid of all of our Chromebooks in our entire school. And we do know that's a financial risk we're having to take because we may not get all of those back, or they may end up breaking. But I think it was a risk we were willing to take based on how long we now know we're gonna be out of school. While also asking families who do have personal tablets or computers at home to utilize those, so we can give the Chromebooks to families who don't have those things. And then you can use Zoom and Google Classroom and Facebook on your phone. So that makes it really nice as well. And then highlighting some of the kind of the daily expectations that we've tried to put in place for students and families, both from an academic standpoint, but also a cultural standpoint. With our Facebook posts, we still try to do our morning and afternoon assemblies. So the upper right-hand picture here is actually every morning I put a PowerPoint up on my TV and I go live on Facebook from my living room and talk about announcements for the day and shout outs for kids. I even do we have a monthly launch dance. Yes, I do it by myself. I feel like I'm running a workout video. I now know how those people feel when you talk to no one and just hope that they're doing it at home in their living rooms. So we continued with that, and the kids really enjoy seeing that and doing the dances and getting the shout outs for the work that they're doing at home. We also have our PE teacher. He's down here in the left-hand corner. There's a big jump rope challenge on Facebook now if you haven't seen it. So he was doing a jump rope video for kids. If they have jump ropes at home, some things they could do, some fun activities they could do with jump ropes. Lunch videos, our paras run a lunch video, and so they show themselves cooking lunch and snacks, and which is really cool. We also put up our SEL videos, SEL lessons daily. And then we continue on Facebook in our lower grades with Read Aloud. So you can see in the bottom right picture here, one of our teachers used Zoom background and she's reading a book about volcanoes for kids. And she actually made this little outfit out of a brown paper bag, and she showed kids how to make it at home the day before so that they could join her as explorers in the hike up the volcano. So we continued with read alouds, phonics lessons, and then math lessons and math fluency activities. And teachers record these ahead of time and post them up on Facebook. And they're all done from like their living rooms or their dining rooms. And again, it's not a perfect system, but it allows us to get some information out there to families. And then the families who are in the Facebook group can then comment on the videos and answer questions that teachers are asking. For our older grades in 2nd through 4th grade, we've moved to doing posting assignments up on Google Classroom, but also doing live teaching 2 times a week. So I'm sorry, 2 times a day, every day. And so our teachers run about 30-minute meetings. One teacher will run a math meeting in the morning and in the afternoon, and the other one will do a reading meeting in the morning and then the afternoon. And students get the code for that Zoom to join in. Similar if you have a Google account and can use Google Hangouts, exact same thing. And you'll see here in the upper left-hand corner, this is one of our teachers. She took a picture of all of her kids holding their work up to the camera and being able to do some math problems with them virtually, which was really exciting. We also have online learning programs. Some of you may be familiar with like Lexia or Freckle. We use ST Math and Reflex as other opportunities for students to practice at home. And so for those who can't join Zoom or who aren't able to join the Facebook group, then they have access to those programs that they used in our computer lab already prior to leaving school. And so that's kind of our bare minimum expectation that we've tried to hold. And then kind of jumping into like, okay, what does this look like on the planning side? How do you make this feasible for your teachers? And so what we've really pushed our teachers on is trying to do weekly check-ins with students. We again know this isn't possible with every family. There's always going to be, you know, families that may have different challenges that get in the way of this. But the goal is that we at least attempt it and we try to have that check-in in place for families while still being flexible if they need to move a day or time, or maybe it's just a phone call instead of FaceTime or Zoom or Google Hangout, but something so that we can check in with students on a regular basis. We also have for teachers, the daily plans. I would say we scaled back a ton from obviously what we were doing during the regular school year, but just asking them to, you know, have some thought process laid out for the lessons that they're doing and continue with some of the network-wide lessons and curricula that we used prior to school being let out. We've done a lot of work of looking at our learning programs and the data that comes through with that to check and see which students are getting on, how often are they getting on, who's meeting goals, And then working with families to set reminders and update them on progress that their students have made, which is really helpful while also still really celebrating them. Obviously in this hard time, those celebrations are really impactful for families to know that they're doing a good job when things are really so tough and so up in the air. And then we continue to hold as a staff over Zoom. I still check in with my team, my teachers once a week to see how they're doing or talk through any challenges or concerns that they may have for specific students or families. We do a staff huddle every week. Teachers meet in content teams once a week, and we have a whole regional meeting, which includes our North Side School and our South Side School. And then moving into kind of students and families, I know this was a big one of like, what can we really require for our students? And I think the biggest thing here, and I have it on the next slide, but is I use the phrase high expectations, but through the lens of love and support. So really trying to push our families on what they can accomplish and helping them set up the expectations. So if it's what we've really wanted from every family is that they have this daily online learning program login and completion, because they can do it from a phone, a tablet, or the Chromebook that we've sent. And we're working with families who have internet challenges to try to troubleshoot those, everything from helping them call the AT&T and Spectrum people with them to give them another person that's on their side saying, please help us with this. What can they do to support families in getting access to internet? The expectation we've tried to hold is like 10 minutes a day, 10 to 15 minutes a day is like the bare minimum. And then the other things that we've put up there are just, hopefuls that we've had for students and families to make sure, that they know those are resources, and we'd love them to be as involved as possible, but knowing also that every family has its unique challenges and situations. Again, these slides will be shared out, but I wanted to just underscore the need for also some of this fun school culture stuff. So here's some things that we've done at RTP. So whether that's, we've done virtual spirit weeks, SEL check-ins, car parades, video challenges. There's lots of video challenges with movies and dances out there. So that's been a fun one. And then, like I said, with contacting families, just making sure that it's all hands on deck. I call families, our hourly paras call families to try to get a hold of them and try to support them and troubleshoot with them. So have those high expectations that we want to believe every family can do this, but also wrap your arms around them with love and support and help them work through the challenges they may have. I know I only have about like 1 minute left, so I want to just highlight here some things we're thinking about for the fall. Is how to take those systems we're doing now and replicate them. How do we start from the very beginning of the year using Google Classroom and Zooms for things and updating our Facebook so that becomes a habit for families, introducing our online programs sooner, even sending home potential at-home schedules for families so that they already have that laid out for them, putting check-ins in place ahead of time so we can do the communication face-to-face rather than all over the phone and internet like we've had to. And with recruitment, just trying to get creative. I'd love to hear from other schools as I listen to the rest of the panelists today about strategies for recruitment and retainment of students, as that's obviously going to be really difficult when we can't be around. And I just close again, Yaribel, I will send you an updated set of slides. I actually didn't have this slide on the original one I sent you, so I'll send it to you so you can send it out that has the link, or you guys are welcome to take a screenshot right now of the website for our distance learning launchpad, which again has all those resources for SEL, character building, academics, fun stuff, etc., that you could use at your own school rather than trying to recreate things. So that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Your whole network has been doing a lot, and I encourage people. I've actually been into those resources. They're very, very useful, especially if some of you might have your own kids, you might have nieces, nephews, somebody in your family that might not have as much contact with their teacher. Putting them on these videos would really be helpful. that key communication and those expectations being very clear seems to really help, or not seems, we know really helps. So having those expectations clear that you laid out seem to be helping you all move forward collectively. Our next panelist is Janice. Janice Carter. She is the principal at Marvin Pratt, and we do have to applaud her. This is from her feature in the Journal Sentinel for having the #1 school in the city here of Milwaukee with, I believe it was report card score of a 95. So if we can all cheer for her, she took the school being a school that was in the red and moved it to the highest performing school in the city. So Janice is here to share with us how is she working and navigating distance learning, especially in the district where we have some different constraints, different issues that we are confronting, but not allowing those to be a deterrent, and figuring out with the staff through communication and unifying the staff how they're going to continue to move forward. So Janice, take it away.
Thank you. Okay, I hope I'm doing this correctly. Is this working?
Yes.
Okay, so you guys can see my slide. I'm a little not tech savvy. I'm learning. Okay, what I'm going to do is share with you exactly what I gave my staff. I'll be honest, I added some pictures because I was asked to present today. But what I tried to do was tell my staff we're going to do business as normal. Keep your schedules as they were before. We were asked to shut down for COVID. Try to create a calm, nurturing environment for your scholars, because I think, and we have found this to be true, if you are consistent, the worries kind of go away. So that's the environment we wanted to create for our parents and our scholars. So we did an icebreaker. I kind of wanted to gauge where everyone was. I know that my 3rd through 5th grade, they were a little bit more tech savvy because they have been using Google Classroom for quite some time, most of them. So this was a natural transition. I was pleasantly surprised by some of my staff who jumped right on and wanted to facilitate the learning through Google Classroom. So this icebreaker kind of opened my eyes a bit as to what their skill sets were and their strengths. And I have to be honest with you, the ones who have been teaching for quite some time knew more about the online technology than the newbies straight out of college. So that was shocking to me. It was pleasantly surprising though. So I always do meeting norms. So I wanted them to be aware when they were sharing with parents some things that they should be aware of, because some of them, well, one already had a meeting with her parents to talk about expectations. And I kind of shared some of the faux pas that we have been seeing online with people dressing not for success. Being aware of your surroundings. Yes, we are at home, but we are trying to project a very professional image. Muting your microphone, speaking up, being present. This is a stress-free zone because we're all learning. I know oftentimes we think we have to be experts, but we are not. And using the chat section for questions, and then I cut and paste it so I can go back to it later and answer questions. Okay, so I always try to kick off with some type of video saying something. On the side, my vision and rocket is what I put on every piece of communication I send out to my staff. So we have the same message. And then there's a YouTube video, Mindset of a Champion, because I know people were apprehensive about taking this on. And it shows a young scholar at an IB school who talks about having a growth mindset versus having a fixed mindset, and what it took for him to get over that, and what it would take for them as the adults, the instructors, to get over theirs as well. So I wanted to kick that off to kind of calm their nerves. And so then these were the 3 main agenda items. These were given to me from my boss, but I kind of took them and did my own thing with them. Staff expectations for remote learning. Again, I'm in Milwaukee Public Schools and there are some restrictions that we had to follow. I'm going to give you full disclosure. So I hope that we can respect that this will stay in this chat. We had been doing this. Lots of teachers had already started to connect and provide assignments prior to the directive from the district saying, okay, this is what we're doing. because we as a staff know the importance of scholars pressing ahead and things that they need to know. So we started some things before the district kind of gave us that direction. So we started with a survey to assess their needs. From the district, they're asking for virtual and paper. For the most part, we are virtual. I did send out some mailings to some scholars that we had a hard time connecting with, and through that, we were able to connect with them. Daily schedules, I'm still reviewing them. Facilitation time, office hours, pair schedules remain the same, and specialist times. So we pretty much have the same day. Reading, writing, and math are the key subjects, and everything is based on the Common Core State Standards and WEMOs. We are fortunate that the curriculum that we use also always has an online component to where you can go and download and get things and just upload them. So that's wonderful. We did a rotation of science.
Dr. Carter, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. We can't see your screen. So we can just see your homepage, but we can't see your presentation. So if it's not working, I think we can jump on and run the slides for you, but you keep going and let us know what you want.
I am so sorry. I kept asking if you could see it. I sent it in. I apologize.
No worries.
Okay, so if you guys can share with me, gotta love technology. And I'm just rocking and rolling. Okay. So should I wait till it's uploaded for me, or?
You keep going and we'll get it up and going for you.
Okay, so I guess we can share later. I do apologize. So we do a rotation of science, social studies, our IB units. We are a candidate school, so we wanted to keep that momentum going. Art, Phy-Ed, health, and music. And the directive from MPS was standards. We are to focus on the standards where students are not yet proficient. And then I added standards not taught. So I want them to have the experience, the exposure to lessons behind standards that we hadn't taught at the grade levels, as well as focusing on standards that they are not yet proficient in. Okay, and then the meetings. We were mandated to keep our PD meetings 1 day a week. My staff is great in that when we first started, we did grade level meetings with everyone, I think Wednesday through Friday. I did a separate meeting with the paraprofessionals to make sure that they were clear on their expectations. So they've been pretty flexible. Okay, next up, communication with students and families. I never stopped sending out a weekly message to my staff, nor did I stop sending out weekly messages to parents via Class Dojo. So that's what I did. I made sure from day one, they got a communication every week. Mr. Gates, who is my IB coordinator / implementer, put together a video, I think maybe 2 to 3 weeks in, where we all sent messages, including our tutors, home to students about, thank you. You go, Steph. You want to click through. There, okay, go back one. Thank you. Okay, so we sent home a video created I can share. Very proud of that. He did a great job. We're checking in with scholars and families weekly, the para and the teacher, and we're recording their needs, their wants, their frustrations, documenting them. If we can't contact someone, we let the social worker know. I did give the directions to and went through a training with the paraprofessionals about Google Voice, as well as Google Hangout or Meet, so they can have those meetings. I also talked to them about Zoom, other ways that they could communicate where they would feel comfortable talking to parents if they didn't want to disclose their personal information. Dojo, they added myself, the pairs, the specialists, and the support staff, and then I have my parent coordinator doing robocalls. We are putting together a virtual open house, something that we missed. Every year we do most important person. So I'm thinking we can still continue with that, where we take those scholars who do the pieces of the people that they love the most, and they present them with their essay as well as an award, which I can mail out. But we always do that through a PowerPoint so we can upload that. And every Friday here, we do Fun Fridays. That's the incentive that we do to make sure that scholars who are on track, who submit their assignments, that sort of thing, so the teachers can do a Google Meet. In fact, yeah, we have some scheduled. I've asked that when they have meetings with parents and or students, they include me. We've had some virtual parent meetings as far as assistance as to how to help their scholars. I've done some with parents here myself, and I know one teacher has for sure. And I already mentioned about letting the social worker know, and a note in Infinite Campus. Again, in my head, I have other ideas, but I'm bound by some of the restrictions of MPS, and I'm strategically getting around those things so scholars are successful. Okay, record keeping. We are fortunate in that we had finished the term 2 report card, so I gave everybody their feedback. We have an online record keeping system, gradebooks, so I've told them to make sure they're up to date so parents can access them. This is required K-5 through 12th grade. So K-3 and K-4 have decided to create their gradebook in Infinite Campus as well, so it's already there. So I asked them in terms of attendance of students, because thinking of my scholars, what they're dealing with, they're going to maintain the attendance of students based on the logins and the completed assignments. I have some families who elected to pick up maybe 1 Chromebook versus 5 because they didn't want to be responsible for 5 $300 Chromebooks. So that was their choice. So thinking of that, I have to be flexible in how I allow them to complete their assignments. So if you get it in, we'll count that, because we know that sometimes with things happening, people out of work, starting unique job schedules, things may be different at home. So that's how we're tracking that. But I must say, if we have not heard from scholars or parents, we are reaching out, and they have been tenacious, my staff, to make sure that they have contacted everyone. I mean, it's been fantastic. The directive from, of course, grades can go up, not decline. So we're looking for samples of work for improvement in specific Common Core State Standards, WEMOs, work to reach proficiency if less than proficient, and areas that have not yet been scored. So that's our goal at this point. We are an early start school, so we end, May 21st. So our year is almost up, but we want to get the most bang for our buck at this point. And then that was it. That was all I presented. We started with those grade level meetings, then we went back and had a second round of grade level meetings. And I love Mr. Beck, I know you're on here. He set them up where we could jump in and out of each meeting as if we were actually walking into a classroom with the grade levels, to ask them if they had the agenda, they had any questions. I wanted them to talk because I find out lots of things from them. They're educating each other. They're talking about ways to make learning easier for the scholars. And because of that conversation, I can say most of my teachers, if not all, have Google Classrooms. It's not a district mandate. They are given options, but that is something that they have influenced each other to do, which is fantastic, because that's the type of people they are. And that's why they're here at Pratt Elementary, because they're rock stars.
Thank you so much, Janice, for sharing. I think that when we look at what the first two have said so far, as we look at that power of consistency and that clarity in messaging really helps not only the staff succeed, but also the students and parents. Also having a clear communication plan that is very frequent, but making sure that that messaging is concise, right? So we need to up the number of times that we're contacting parents, students, and being very strategic, but not overwhelming them, so that everyone can be successful and not feel overwhelmed and be more willing to engage and participate. So with our next presenter, we have Jim. Jim is from assistant principal at St. Augustine Prep, and they're using a little bit of a different platform, but I hope that some of those key elements continue to be the same on how are they engaging parents, how are they engaging students, and then we can share a little bit more about their expectations for teachers. So Jim, go ahead and take it over.
Sorry, Jim. I just wanted to jump in for a second and see if there were questions that people had for Janice or Courtney before we moved on, because I know everybody can't stay through the end of the call. So if there are questions that people wanted to either drop in the chat box, or if you wanted to unmute yourself and ask those, please go right ahead.
Hi, this is Jennifer, Milwaukee Academy of Science. This might be a stupid question. Maybe other people know how to do this. But when she said, Janice, when you said you set up a meeting where you could do your grade level meetings and jump from meeting to meeting, that is very interesting to me. And I can't wrap my brain around it, but I'd love to be able to do something like that. So I don't know if that's
So
like
what
instruction.
Mr. Beck did was set up a Google Meet at the same time for different groups of people, but he included myself, him, and Mr. Gates into each meeting. So I could log in and log out. So I could jump in and jump out at any given time to answer questions, find out what was going on, that sort of thing.
Oh, so you use Google for that. Okay, got it. Thank you.
You can do something similar to on Zoom. If people haven't used the breakout room feature, it sounds really similar to what Janice is saying.
Yeah, we were told to stay away from Zoom because of the hacking. So that was a district, because that's been my go-to, so yeah.
Awesome. Are there any other questions for Courtney or for Janice?
Oh, can I mention one more thing that I failed to put in my PowerPoint? We have always had a list of online resources that we give out quite frequently that the parents were very familiar with. We give them out with every report card, and we add to it as we find resources. So the parents already had that, and I uploaded that again to Class Dojo as well. So they've always been kind of online learning. So that kind of gave us some time to get our acts together here to kind of have a unified message.
Thank you so much, Janice and Courtney. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jim. Thank you so much for being here.
You are welcome.
Jim, are you having issues with the share screen?
I am. I just want to get back to my original first screen I was trying to share with everybody.
Okay, if you want to go ahead, then I will. I can pull up and share my screen with your PowerPoint if you would like me to do that.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
Will do.
So I guess I want to start. I'm Jim Kalupa. I'm the middle school assistant principal at Augustine Prep. And I kind of want to just talk about our journey starting out really knowing, as we've talked about before, on March 13th, really knowing that we're going to have to think about going online learning and calling it our distance plan. So really on March 16th, what we did is we put together a plan that we had centers for our middle school, and we had pickup of Chromebooks, a deployment system of Chromebooks. We had paperwork for our families outlining what was going to be happening, all the contact information for all of our staff. So scholars really had contact people and really setting up the expectations for all of our families. So Augustine Prep is a K through 11 school. I'm obviously working in the middle school, 6 through 8, but, and the schools are a little bit different. Obviously the expectations are different in elementary school as compared to middle school, as compared to high school. So as we kind of go through the slideshow, I want to kind of talk about some themes and some goals, but really what I want everybody to kind of take away this afternoon is kind of really 4 themes. Number 1, we really wanted to stress opportunity for all of our scholars. Wanted to make sure that we were going to be intentional and make sure that we gave multiple at-bats for our kids to show mastery. We wanted to make sure that we were giving grace and understanding that all of our families are coming from different places, and just trying to simplify things in our platforms, in our ways that we're reaching kids so that all of our kids can be successful. So Stephanie and Melissa, are you able to get to my first slide? Okay, I'll just go right from here from operations. So the first thing that we did with operations is we came up with a Google Doc, and we spent a tremendous amount of time on it. It's actually like 14 pages long, so I'm really not going to share it out this afternoon. But some of the things that we outlined for our staff is we just troubleshot and tried to figure out everything that we could possibly share information with our staff for things like the big picture goals of distance learning. You know, what are we really looking for? The schedule for the rest of the year, a daily schedule so that everybody knew what the expectation was. Our advisory class, which I'll talk about, is a class that starts at 9:15 for all of our scholars. And it's a chance for kids to get together and kind of resume the normal part of the day. So everything that we start with starts in advisory. What the pre-recorded lessons would look like, and what the expectation was to have all staff making pre-recorded lessons. Our accountability assignment, we have one accountability assignment that is in each course per day that scholars have to do, and that's graded. Expected office hours for our staff. If you're going to be absent, what's the protocol? Messages, both in Spanish and English, examples for all of our staff. Our attendance expectations, what grading would look like. We have a rubric for distance learning engagement, because I think that's a huge incentive for kids. So we've tried to be very, very creative and talk about distance learning engagement, the expectations for staff, when we expect them to be ready to go, what time, and really what the normal day is going to look like. What a no-show for a kid is the expectation, what that looks like. And then if they're not doing something, we have some long-term projects that we expect our staff to be doing. So some of our goals for distance learning, we had a goal of 90% daily attendance for our scholars. So we had high expectations, and this is what we set up mid-March. We wanted to make sure that we used all of our resources, so we have all hands on deck for staff, support staff, SEL, everything that we could possibly use in our middle school, we're using all of our staff. Again, we have a high expectation for grades. That includes assessments, classwork, and distance learning engagement. And then we set goals of that we would identify 10% of our scholars that they were going to need urgent support with distance learning. 90% of our scholars would be engaged, and 80% of our scholars would demonstrate mastery on predetermined standards that we really focused on and narrowed down. Okay, are you able to flip the slide?
On my end, Jim, it looks like it does. It is flipped. Can everybody see the changing slides or not? Jaribel or Melissa, can you see the slides moving?
It looks like Jim still has his screen shared. It's not, it doesn't look like your screen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll be able to do this from here then.
Okay,
so
go ahead.
Schedule of our normal day, we really have like an A and B type of day. So our scholars, the expectation is that our scholars are going to get on at 9:15. So that's when our advisory starts, is at 9:15. Our advisory normally takes about 9:15 to 9:45. It's 20 to 30 minutes. At that time, we go over our schedule. So again, we have like an A or B day. One day will be math, specials, and PE. The other day will be reading and science. The content teacher, we have 12 of them in our middle school. They always act as the advisor, and that's been the same the whole school year. So the normalcy, we really, really try to make sure that we have the normalcy, that there's still the same familiar face with the advisor. All of our advisors are joined by a support staff, and then they are taking attendance during advisory and then interacting with the kids. So we stay online live from 9:15 to 9:45-ish. Again, we're looking for class participation. We're trying to get the kids engaged. We might have a prayer, we might have chapel, we might be playing games. But we're trying to have everybody there at the same time so that they understand what the expectation is for the day. what's going on in school, and again, just trying to keep things as normal as possible. All right, one of the things that we really prided ourselves on is communication with families. So initially, our executive director sent out a letter to all families outlining what our distance learning was going to look like. And then the principals from each school sent out individual communication to the families, indicating how long that they would be online for, and all the expectations. Again, when our families came to pick up the Chromebooks, we sat down with them and kind of went over, what formats we would be using. We use Schoology, we use GoGuardian, and then we use Infinite Campus. We communicate on Schoology and also on GoGuardian. So again, I can't emphasize enough communication with families. And again, everybody is on deck. Homework, I'm calling families for 3 missing assignments. We have a daily assignment check-in. If somebody's not there on advisory, we're calling them right away. So I know that we're short on time. If you want to flip to the last slide, I will be happy to share. So our successes and our challenges, we have met that 90% attendance goal. So we are tracking that. We have all kinds of internal trackers. We have a high percentage of homework completions. The challenges that we're having is we're really having students that are really struggling, missing each other. And I can't emphasize that enough. It's the unknown. And we use our therapists, we use social workers. So we're trying to connect with those kids because we have kids that are stressed just as much as our staff is. Creativity. I mean, our advisory teachers were using a lot of different platforms, Pictionary, games, quizzes, anything that you can think of, 3 truths and a lie. But we are trying to be as creative as possible. So we're constantly trying to share ideas. Our Chromebooks, we do have one-to-ones, but we never let the kids take them home. So now we're starting to add up in repairs. Obviously, security is a little bit of an issue. We've got GoGuardian, and we're constantly using that. And then that 10% of kids that we're struggling with, the accountability aspect and making them advocate for themselves. So we're constantly trying to reach that 10% and make sure that they are, helped and supported in any way possible. So thank you. I kind of wanted to rush through. I know we're short of time. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Jim. And what we're going to do is we're going to have Maurice come on. And then at the end, we'll have about 7 to 10 minutes for Q&A for everyone. So if you have questions, all of our participants, start thinking about those. And once Maurice is done, then we will open it up for Q&A. Maurice is the founder and executive director of Milwaukee Excellence, which is also a top-rated school here in the city. He has had the #1 school last year and the #1 middle school, and has also had multiple distinguishing awards, especially for serving low-income students and still having some of the highest proficiency scores as measured on the state assessments. So Maurice will be sharing a little bit more about how Milwaukee Excellence is transitioning to distance learning and their plan moving forward. Take it away, Maurice.
Can you guys hear me? Yes, great. Well, thanks for having me. Milwaukee Excellence. Yeah, let's go. We don't have that much time. So here's what we're doing. Try to keep it simple. So is my video in the way? Or can you see just the... I'm great. Okay, thank you. Our digital platform is just a Google Sheet and Google Classroom. Very, very simple. We really tried to keep this as basic as possible. We got our system up and running the Tuesday morning after everything was announced on that Friday. And so what we have, every single teacher is required to have a Google Sheet. In this big Google Sheet document, they each have a tab, and on the tab, they have the daily lesson. They have mini lessons that they've created. They have answer keys. They have anything that they need on their Google Classroom. If there's a quiz that week, the quiz is published. You can see the teacher's phone number. You can see the access for the Google Classroom. And we always do cultural events every week. So you can see whatever cultural events that we have that week, whether it be trivia or scavenger hunts or all sorts of things. I think there's a cooking class tonight. I'm not going to do that. I've been on calls all day, and I have another one after this. But if you want to cook some chicken, we're cooking chicken tonight. So great. Wow, look at that. But really what we wanted to do was we wanted the information to be accessible to all schools. And so this is not just open to Milwaukee Excellence. Any school in the city can use this information and can do the quizzes and can do all the lessons. We also provide answer keys. And so if for whatever reason you don't have access to a Chromebook, a student could, and hopefully you can see this with all my tabs, we'll have an answer key from the teacher that they can get all the answers for any work that they do. And many of the students just text the work to the teacher directly. You saw the phone number on the presentation. This is what those lessons, those 10-minute lessons look like. You can see Mr. Faber's horrible handwriting. It's just trash, but we still love him. All right, back to presentation. Okay, in terms of culture, we still wanted to make things fun for students. So our end of year trips got canceled. We're gonna go to DC and go to Memphis. And so what we decided to do over spring break, we didn't have any lessons, but we had teachers create virtual field trips for the kids. And so different things they can explore, different movies they can watch, different things they can learn about. These live cams at the San Diego Zoo are pretty impressive. I don't know if anybody does that, but you could waste a lot of hours doing that. I do not recommend it if you got some stuff to do. But maybe it's Sunday night, I don't know, with a bottle of water, I don't know. You could look at the San Diego Zoo. But yeah, our kids loved it. It was great. I think this is what sets us apart from some other schools is how lively we are on social media. So we do 2 wellness checks for each kid each week. So they get 2 phone calls. We log and track the phone call. So you can see here, here's an example of our wellness tracker. So teachers put in if they made contact, who was the teacher that called, and these are the dates that they called and the notes. So are you completing your quizzes? How are you doing? Does anybody in your family have the coronavirus? Is there anything we need to know? Does your family need help with anything? How can Milwaukee Excellence support you? And so we've been sending out, you know, gift cards where we can to help some families, or we still had a lot of non-perishable food items from our food drive in November. And so we've just been sort of doing drop-offs. Whatever our families need at this time, we've been sort of doing it because honestly, we're still getting paid for the kids that we have at our school, but we're not spending any of the money on the things we would have otherwise. So we might as well just give it out, and that's what we're doing. We did a game night, Netflix and hang, because we don't chill at Milwaukee Excellence. We did a Pride Week, so we did a virtual Pride Week, I think the second week of this shutdown. We do a trivia night. I host it every Tuesday night. We do workouts with Mr. Moore on Mondays. He's very strong. We give out DoorDash prizes. We gave $100 in DoorDash to every staff member on Monday. So they got $25 2 weeks ago. The board approved me to give them $100 this week. So they got $100. They were in tears. It was great. So I always say, feed them, shout them out, repeat. So that's what we try to do. That's how we keep our staff happy. So we really just want to make them feel special during this time because it is really hard. Many of them have families that they're, you know, looking out for and maintaining while also trying to look out for their 120 students they have in each grade level. And so we really want to make sure that they feel special in this time. And so we really ramped up our social media. Those little dots at the top of this, I don't know, rectangle, that's how many times Ms. Borja posted in one day. That's a lot of times, but check it out. Student recruitment, somebody asked about it earlier. So we made everything 100% digital. So whether it's a fall release form, an online form, everything is now on the website and you can complete the entire recruitment process online. We made it simple where we can text almost everything we can text to a family and they can fill it out on their phone in order to enroll their kid. Even We got DocuSign, so they can DocuSign every document. We posted on our website. We have 120 spots in 6th grade. We have 98 families signed up. So we got to use DocuSign every year. This is the easiest way to get people to sign up. No hassle signups. Somebody asked what our aides and paras doing. For us, they're doing recruitment. So that's what they're doing for us. So it's just student recruitment, keeping our 8th going into 9th graders engaged, because we have a high school now. Some of them want to go to Rufus King. I went to Rufus King. I'm telling them, don't go to Rufus King. It's hard telling them not to do that, but we tell them anyway. We sent 1,000 mailers to students in 6th grade and in 9th grade, or going into 9th grade, because we have about 30 spots still open for 9th grade. And like I said, the 120 spots in 6th grade. And then with this longer term planning, just really keeping it simple. So by the time our students are, we get to May 20th, which would have been our last day of school, we'll have all the lessons posted for the first 11 weeks of next school year. And so we feel pretty prepared for what digital or virtual learning can look like next year. We're not going to do summer school. All of our students are returning to Milwaukee Excellence, so we can make up the time. There's no one graduating. There's no 12th graders. We just have 6th through 9th grade now. So we feel like we can make up 2 months of learning over the next 3 years, for some of the kids, 6 years. And then this summer, we're going to have a 10-person sort of curriculum team sort of deciding what does the playbook look like next year. I think virtual learning will continue. I think this is the future for education. So we're already thinking about, our kids already do Alex Math and Lexia Power Up for English. They have to do 20 units a week on their own. We're thinking about, is it those 20 weeks plus we really encourage parents to get kids Chromebooks. We actually filled out a grant in February to the Burke Foundation to get Chromebooks for kids to take home. And so we didn't know Corona was going to do this, but we're lucky I got that grant in right on time. So hopefully this just becomes a part of what we do at Milwaukee Excellence. Tell parents, hey, this year, don't buy Air Max 95s. Get a Samsung Chromebook. So if they do that, we feel like we can make up the time. And okay, I think I caught us up.
Excellent job, Maurice. You did. You caught us up. Now we want to make sure that we leave some opportunity for everybody to ask questions. I do want to make sure that I thank all of our presenters, because with all of the things that you guys have going on and all you're doing to ensure that education is continuing for our scholars most in need, you all took time to prep, to share your best practices, so that as a city, as a collective, that we are having a strong system of education for all kids. So thank you guys so much for doing that. Maurice and Janice, Jim and Courtney, you are much appreciated. I saw a couple questions in the Dropbox that I wanted to just pose for all students, or for all the panelists. How are you going to kind of make up, or do you have a plan for making up some of the lost learning that has happened as your school or your network has transitioned into a virtual environment?
Well, that is the plan. That is part of the plan. That's why I have the teachers touching on those areas, and that will be our starting point when we come back, hopefully in August. If not, it will be Google Classroom, so we can get them caught up. And the vision that some of the teachers have already shared with me was that they want to start looking for those resources to even send home over the summer with scholars and kind of check in to make sure that they're on point. The unique thing about MPS is that we know that we're servicing a group of children that have historically been behind academically, and we've been able to grow them. So it's not a huge worry. That's just how we do business. But we want to make sure that those that are on point and above grade level keep growing. So that's really how we view it.
Thank you. Others, Jim?
One of the things that we did is we sat down and looked at our course plans and looked at our anchor standards, and then tried to narrow our anchored standards down to priority anchor standards. And then during one of our PD days, we sat down and just vertically planned and said, what are the essential skills that you need going into math, science, ELA next year from 6th to 7th, 7th to 8th? What are those? So that we could be kind of cohesive and narrow things down as much as possible to have essential skills.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that's back to that idea we talked about at the beginning of really thinking about what are your priority standards that you need to ensure your scholars are understanding now so that they're able to make that transition. A question someone had for you, Maurice, is how are you approaching hiring in the virtual environment? You talked about student recruitment, but how are you approaching hiring?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. This might be like our best hiring season ever, just because we made it all virtual, and we have time to do it. So I sent out 5 offers this morning. So I think everything is online. We have 2 people who do the phone screens. After the phone screen, the last thing I do, I just send the offer, and I might talk to somebody at the end. So this for the principals, like I don't do much, but my principals and assistant principals, they do some of the interviewing. Really, it's our chief academic officer who does the interviewing. We really just, it's Facebook, it's Share, it's LinkedIn. When we have our all staff meetings, we tell people, here's a script, copy and paste it, put it on your Facebook. It's just so easy to do when you have 45 people on a Zoom, and you can send them a script and they all post it at the same time. So that's kind of how we've been getting the word out, and that's our process.
Something
Awesome.
we've done too at Rocket Ship, because like Marie said, I am doing some of the hiring and the interviewing part of it is doing virtual lessons has been a unique one because we usually have teachers do some type of demo lesson or student facing portion of the interview, but we've designed a demo lesson where we've allowed them to do a virtual lesson, and as the interviewers we're being the students in the room. And so it might be like, okay, you gave that direction, now only 50% of the class complies, what do you do next? So that teachers really have to think about the moves they would make, and that's been really helpful. It also is helpful to see who is savvy with the technology and doing distance learning, because the reality, like Marie said, is we might be doing this again in the fall or winter of next year. And so it's helpful to see what those people's strengths are in distance learning on top of the face-to-face traditional route would be.
Just to chime in, same thing, ditto. We did everything virtually. We just got through our 2nd round of interviews, and we're starting our 3rd for paraprofessionals. So actually it's gone so much better because like Marie said, you have time now. You have time to actually do it.
Agreed.
That's great. Well, thank you so much to our panelists. These are some ideas, some quotes that I think are important. Never waste a good crisis, elevate bold thinking. So we are definitely in a crisis. This is definitely unprecedented, but we also know that our schools were not functioning in a way that was serving all of our students. So Richard Carranza is the chancellor of NYC Schools. He has the biggest district in the nation serving 1.1 million students. And during a webinar with him, this is one of those ideas. This is an opportunity for us to rethink how we're doing schools, rethink how we're servicing students, and bring some new ideas. And I think from our panelists that we've seen just that. We're responding, but while we're responding, we're also thinking about those students with the highest needs that often are forgotten about. So it doesn't matter where you are at in this journey. I know some of you are coming into this webinar just starting to get your teachers back to work. Some of you are already 6 weeks in. The goal is, what can you take from here to improve? What tweaks can you make? And what works within your system? Don't try to do it all. This isn't a time to overwhelm staff. Figure out what your strengths are and then what systems you can add so that you can continue to motivate your staff, to motivate your students and families to continue learning. And there's no better quote, I think, than if not us, then who? We are the best suited right now. You, the principals, have the best access, the best connection to parents and staff. So use that power, use that influence, use those relationships to make change happen. And know that you're not in it alone. So thank you so much for coming. If you have any questions, we at City Forward Collective, the staff, will stay at least for another 10 to 15 minutes on so you can ask questions. Know that every single PowerPoint that was shared, we will be sharing out in post-meeting email. And we just ask that you complete our survey. So if you can complete the survey about today's session and give us any feedback, we greatly appreciate it. And once you're done with the survey, just type done in the chat box and we will be here for any questions that you have.
Thanks, Jody Bell, and thank you guys so much for being here and engaging in this work. And thank you for all that you are doing on behalf of kids. I want to send a shout out to my teammates, Melissa and Jody Bell. I think this is the 9th webinar that they have pulled together in the last 2 weeks, and they have done a fantastic job. It's been a lot of long nights, but all of that has been done on behalf of you as leaders in this city, and ultimately all of us in service to kids. So shout out to both of them, and thank you for all the work. Oh, and now on my music, I forgot. I'm on it.
Thanks, everyone, and thank you, Stephanie, as well. Appreciate you all for being here. Just a quick note about the survey. If you cannot click on it, just make sure to copy and paste it into your browser. As Janice was saying earlier about issues with Zoom, it is a real thing, and so now they have taken away the option to link anything in the chat box so that it doesn't go into some link that we didn't want to share. So just copy and paste it and it should work. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks again.